Assalamu alaikum. The most holy name of Allah world, whom we forever thank and praise for our beloved teacher, leader, spiritual guide, comforter, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, whom we also thank for not leaving us with no one, but leaving us with a great one in the person of Minister Louis Farrakhan. Beloved brothers and sisters, it's a pleasure to be here and to see you here and to be back home with you. And it's been pretty hectic. I was just telling Sister Trina, for years I've always thought gray hair was so pretty. And I always wanted a lot of it. I never could get any of it. And I finally found out the secret. I should have tried to move to New York a few years ago. I would have had it. My gray hair has doubled in 3 weeks just trying to get settled here in the city. But all praise is due to Allah. It's worth it. It's worth every minute of it and every stiff muscle of it. And I want to thank each and every one of you for the great help that you have been and are being in us making this move. And we will continue to need your help. And there have been believers over every day doing something to give us a hand. But we truly, truly thank you. And we pray, Allah, that we will be worthy of having such brothers and sisters as you are here in New York City. I also want to say that it is thoroughly tested, especially the laborers, in order for this move to be made. And I can say to you unequivocally that you won't find any better laborers anywhere in the nation. Okay, I think that they had already proved their mettle to a point. You see, under stress and in a crisis, that's when you get that final little bit of knowledge of what a person is really made of. Okay, and I just don't see any better laborers anywhere in the country. One of the top ones we kind of are losing, we're in the process of losing on this end, but gaining on the other end, and he just walked in the door, he happens to be here, Brother Wazir Muhammad, who is the Minister of Finance for the Nation of Islam, and you'll get a chance to see him a little bit later. As you all know, you knew him as Brother Juan Muhammad, the Secretary of Number 7. Well, he's still the Secretary of Number 7 for a little while, but you will get a chance to talk to him a little bit later. And Brother Sterling, of course, is already recognized across the country as the up-and-coming captain in training in the ranks. Sister Trina Muhammad, who is also our captain in training on the sister side, and now this is not just me talking, I've heard other people make the same remark who do any type of traveling, that, usually when you are among your own so much, they don't really appreciate you. But those who travel and those who know, every MGT captain in training in this country will tell you there is none as progressive as Sister Trina Muhammad. So we've got a lot of folks who don't have any titles, who are just really showing this 13-week period that we're in is the most marvelous thing that's happened. For those of you who may not know what we're talking about, throughout the nation, most or all of the mosque and study groups either already have or are in the process or are about to embark on a 13-week period during which we do a thorough analysis of what we're all about. The way we do this is that we take everybody who's in the ranks and let them hold the top positions for a week. And at the end of as we go, and especially at the end of the 13 weeks, we all get together and analyze the duties. Now, I think that's one of the greatest programs that's ever been structured. Because many times, those of us who are in the positions of laboring all the time don't realize that we have a one-sided vision. We see everything from a laborer's point of view. And there are non-laborers out there who can see our position from their point of view, and we don't always get the information from them that we need. By the same token, there are those in the ranks who see it from the point of view of a non-laborer and never understand the problems that a laborer goes through. So when we switch roles and let the laborers be non-laborers, they begin to see how the non-laborers feel and see things, and then the non-laborers begin to see what the laborers are up against. And when we complete this thing and everybody has played every role, then we can sit down and we'll get some ideas on how to better run the ship. And I think it's marvelous, and I see it progressing very, very well here and in other places that I've been. Now, why is it necessary for this 13-week analysis? This is what we want to do today. I haven't gone in to bring you a whole lot of stuff today because I've been busy trying to move. But I think that we need to look at that 13 weeks and what we're doing. You know, many of us get hung up on the study of history from the perspective that we had it in school. And we're quick to quote the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talking about that history of all our subjects is most attractive and best able to reward our research. And so based on that, we come up with a bunch of facts and figures just like we did in school. We look at how we were in school and we talk about, 1776 this happened, and 1864 this happened, and blah, blah, blah. In school, they never taught us why it happened. And we find ourselves approaching it the same way. This is why the so-called black nationalist movement listened to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, went off their own way, going to do their own thing, and never got off the ground. They went out teaching black studies and black history and studying all about Africa and all that. They talked about how Timbuktu was built, how Sangay, the Mali Republic, old Ghana, how the Gold Coast came about. They talked about that, but they left out a principal ingredient. What were the springs and motivations that made those black people rise to the top? They couldn't tell us why they did it, therefore we didn't know how to do it. And that's why here we are 10, 15, 20 years later, still talking about what happened in Timbuktu and ain't established a Timbuktu ourselves. Because nobody told us what was it that got in these men and women that made them build these great nations. We didn't understand when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad talked about history, he was saying that the value of history is because it exposes these springs, these pressure things that people are ready to pop and do things when you really study the true history. So true history is not what happened. True history is why it happened. This is why you and I get so confused and so easily used and abused and misused on the basis of black people supposedly being freed from slavery by the Emancipation Proclamation. We study about the Civil War, we can name the battles, we can name the generals, we can name all that, and yet we don't even know why the Civil War was fought. We let them brainwash us so that if you ask any black person just about on the street, why did they fight the Civil War? To free the slaves. That's a lie. Well, what does the Emancipation Proclamation do? It frees all the slaves. That's a lie. You find a bunch of folks in various states, I know in Texas, Louisiana, California, Arizona, back on June 19th, and some of them on June 15th in Arizona, I think, celebrated a holiday called Juneteenth. And they were supposed to have been celebrating, and when they found out about the Emancipation Proclamation, and you find I know some black people got PhDs right now from some of the biggest universities in the country, and some from out of the country, from the Sorbonne and places like that, University of Heidelberg, running around with degrees all stuffed in their pockets, have never read the Emancipation Proclamation, and walk around today with all their learning, all their degrees, thinking that the Emancipation Proclamation said all the slaves are free. That is not what the Emancipation Proclamation said. Go to your library and read a copy of it. The Emancipation Proclamation, Abraham Lincoln said only that those states that were in insurrection against the federal government would have to give up their slaves. You will never find a federal law that ever freed the slaves in New York. The slaves in Delaware, there's no federal law ever passed to free the slaves. No federal law was ever passed to free the slaves in Connecticut or Massachusetts. Only in the deep South. Only the ones who refuse to obey the federal government. Now, obey them in what? This is why we got to learn whys. You know, that's something little children always ask you, and you get impatient and tell them, oh, shut up, quit asking me that because you don't know. When you get to the end of what you know, you don't want to hear no more, you understand? But that's one thing the children ask, why? Now, when we get older, they brainwash that out of us. Somebody tells you, oh, such and such a thing happened. Oh, is that right? Fine. You don't ever ask why. Why is that so? Y'all ask what makes salt taste salty. We don't take nothing for granted. Why? Why does the Emancipation Proclamation only specify that the slaves in certain states be free and does not free the slaves in the other states? If it was to free slaves. If they were interested, if Lincoln loved black folks so that he couldn't stand to see us in the bonds and chains of slavery anymore, why didn't he free us all? Why did he just pick the southern states to free us? He didn't even free the states in his native state of Kentucky. Or in the state he adopted, Illinois. What does it all mean? Why? What did they fight the war for? Why did the Emancipation Proclamation hit on those states? Money, honey. That's the name of the game, and that's what the Civil War was fought for. They didn't get... Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, he made a statement that he believed that the divine plan meant that there would always be one superior race and one inferior race, and he would prefer that the superior race would always be the white race. That's what the great emancipator said. Then why didn't he free the slaves in the South? He also made a statement which is documented. If I could keep this union together and not free one slave, I would do it. And we sat in school, grew up loving Lincoln, who was only trying to help his brothers in the North not go bankrupt. Why? Cotton was king. You look at all those old movies from back in the 17th and 18th, and the 18th and the 19th century. You don't see a bunch of rich folks up around in this area. You see all them old rich folks with rich plantation owners down in the South, don't you? That's where the money was. Why? What happened? Sorry, Jaime, but I got to tell you like it is. When the Jews first came here, and they landed, particularly in New York, they would not let them have any retail, whatever passed for license at that time. Jews could not buy goods and sell them in the United States. So the Jews then set up the first import-export with the nations of Europe where they still had relatives and friends. They set up import-export. All right, which was fine. Folks didn't mind it. They bringing money into the country. But a funny thing happened on the way to the bank. The North and the South began to compete with each other for the foreign money. And the South won. Why? Because in the North, in the factories of the North, everybody who worked had to be paid. So it cost the North more to produce the goods because they had to pay their workers. The South could sell cheaper because they had slave labor. So the South was getting rich and the North was going bankrupt, and that's why the Civil War was fought. The first thing Lincoln told them to do was to raise their prices and be in competitive prices with the North. They would not do that. And because they would not do that, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation. Since you won't raise your prices, we're going to free your slaves, so you have to pay folks to work, and then you can't undercut us. Was that Nat Cole used to sing, you don't learn that in school? Oh, praises due to Allah. Now, let me just point out another thing to you. In our lessons, as we study, here we are in 1985, and we know that at last count, the federal government claimed that there were 57 million black folks like me and you here in America. Yet when we learn our lessons to recite, we still must refer to 17 million of us here. Why? Why don't we change it with the times? Are we being stupid? Are we being ignorant that we don't know how to change the figures with the times? Well, then tell me this. Are white folks stupid and ignorant? Now, when I was going to school, which was a long time ago, they taught us that Manhattan Island was bought from the Indians for some trinkets that were valued at $24. They teach you the same thing? Yes, and you know what year you went to school, right? Yes, now, with inflation like it is, they usually tell you what that would be worth in today's money. Now, you know $24 when Manhattan was bought is not $24 today. In fact, let's get down to the real nitty-gritty. Dollars had not even been invented. It was impossible to evaluate those beads in terms of dollars because they hadn't made the first dollar yet. They were still dealing in British sterling pounds. So there were no dollars. How did they arrive at $24? And how does it remain constant through all of the strong dollar, weak dollar, rise and go, drop and go? How does it remain $24? The reason is because that $24 doesn't have any meaning in this monetary system. That 24 is put there for a specific thing. It is a code that white folks use to teach their children. It has another meaning, and therefore it remains constant. It has nothing to do with the money paid for this for Manhattan Island. Nothing. It is something they're telling them. And the same way with the 17 million, it has nothing to do with how many black folks are in America today. If that 17 million means something else, which we're not going into today, but we're going into some other things, and that's why I bring all of that up. During this 13 weeks, and there's a reason there was 13 weeks, we dealt with 13 bits of instructions that were given to those who hope to labor in this work. We also dealt with a problem that out of the 34 problems left with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad by God himself, this was the 13th in the series. Now, look at this. This problem, according to this problem, the Secretary of Islam offers the reward to the best and neatest worker of this problem. Reward. Must be a rough problem, huh? Not only to the best, but look what it says, to the neatest. Now again, this is why we got to study hard. Don't just take anything for granted. If somebody said neat, you think about they got to have a nice clean sheet of paper, don't you? Look in Webster's dictionary. The first preferred definition of neat is without admixture or dilution. That's why when you see British people or even American brandy drinkers who don't want no chaser and don't want nothing mixed with it, they don't say give it to me straight, they say give it to me neat. It means nothing mixed in. So what this is saying is the person who gives the best answer without any mixed instruction, with the pure truth in it. Okay. And then it states the problem. There are 26 letters in the language. And if a student learns one letter per day, then how long will it take him to learn the 26 letters? Now, brothers and sisters, first of all, what language is it talking about? Okay? Now, the first thing that jumps to our mind naturally is English, because there are 26 letters in the English alphabet, right? But nobody in their right mind thinks that it takes 26 days to learn 26 letters of the alphabet, right? So obviously that ain't what it means. See, we're using symbolism again. It's not talking about that. Plus, who would give you a big reward if they gave you 26 items, A through Z, and you learn them in 26 days? What kind of, you flunk out any school in the world, it took you 26 days to learn your alphabet. What language is it talking about? Let's go up to the very beginning of this statement before the problem. After learning mathematics, which is Islam, and Islam is mathematics, it stands true, you can always prove it at no limit of time. Then you must learn to use it and secure some benefit while you are living. That is luxury, money, good home, friendship, and all walks of life. Sit yourself in heaven at once. That is the greatest desire of your brother and teachers. Now you must speak the language so you can use your mathematical theology in the proper time, otherwise you will not be successful. What did it say? That's the language it's looking at. The language of a mathematical theology that has 26 letters that we must master. Not the English language. The language of a mathematical theology that's identified here by the name Islam, which means entire submission to the will of God. So here's a religion based on the purity of mathematics, which is precise, right, and exact, that you can submit to God in a proper manner, in proper terms, so that you, by your submission, mathematically, you know mathematics don't lie, 2 and 2 is going to be 4 every trip. So this means that if you are submitting in the proper manner to God, He cannot deny you luxury, money, good home, and friendship in all walks of life. That's what their problem is. But it says you must solve what? The problem. It's a problem. See, if we don't have the solution and we don't have these things that actually make heaven on earth, then that means we got a problem. And if we solve the problem, then we get all these things. What is the problem? 26 letters. All right then. Then we have to look up the word letter. Begin to learn what we're talking, because we're not talking about A, B, C, and so forth through Z. We're talking about some other kind of letter. So we have to go back to the big dictionary and start examining what is a letter. What kind of letters are there? And one of the things that we run into is letter meaning learning or wisdom. That's why you find a degree called Doctor of Letters. That's why a person who is unlearned is also called unlettered. Letter is wisdom. There's another term for letter that most of us are familiar with. Another term for letter is epistle. You familiar with that? Okay, if not, we'll familiarize you with it. Okay. Now, when you look in the Old Testament of the Bible, you'll find that it's divided. The different books are divided according to their content. There are books of law, like the first 5 books are books of law, Genesis through Deuteronomy. Those are books, if you read them, you'll see all of the laws spelled out. Then you find books of history. Then you find books called the books of wisdom. And then you find books of prophecy. Those are the 4 divisions of the Old Testament. Now, in the Old Testament, the books that are called the books of wisdom, or the books of letters, or the books of epistles in the Old Testament, are Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, Song of Songs or Songs of Solomon, and Lamentations. 6 of them in the Old Testament. Now, in the New Testament, you have the Gospels, which is nothing but the history of Jesus and his mission. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. They have the Gospels. Then after the Gospels, you have Acts, which tells you it's the Acts of the Apostles, who after Calvary, those who were apostles of Jesus, and the work that they did after Jesus had defeated death and had cheated his enemies out of his life, though they thought he was dead. It tells you then the Acts of the Apostles. Then come what is known as epistles. Some more epistles, some more letters, some more wisdom, like the 6 books in the Old Testament. You find some more. And then you find prophecy. So those are the divisions of the Old and New Testament. And each one of them have similar divisions. The one we want to deal with is the books of wisdom or letters. As we pointed out, there were 6 in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Paul wrote 13. Remember all those to the Corinthians and the Galatians and the Ephesians and all and the Romans, all of them, okay? Paul wrote 13. James wrote 1. Peter wrote 2. John wrote 3, and Jude wrote 1. That's 20. 20 in the New Testament and 6 in the Old Testament. You got 26 letters in the Bible. Let us understand. Now, this is what we are after. It is the key to these 26 that we must turn to unlock the door to luxury, money, good home, friendship, and all walks of life. Now, it also deals with the 10 numbers in the language, but we're not going into that today. And I'm not sure of where they are. I have a suspicion, it's not even an educated guess, it's just a guess, that it might be found in the Holy Quran. But I'm not sure. But I do know the 26 letters that we need to study and understand are the 26 letters that appear in the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. Why? See, when you got books of history and books of prophecy, what do you learn from the history? And what makes you think the prophecy may be true or false? You got to have some central theme around which you revolve to show you this is why that happened, and therefore that's why this is going to happen. So you got to have some little cup of wisdom in there that helps you to analyze the past and explain to you why these things must happen in the future based on that wisdom. For instance, when you take the first of the letters, Job, when we study that, what is the whole crux of the book of Job? Here you've got a man who is righteous in the sight of God. God vouched for him. He wasn't fooling the people. God said there was not a more just man on earth. Wasn't a better man or more righteous man on the whole planet earth than Job. Yet you see Job being turned over in the hands of the devil. You see Job lose his family. You see Job lose his money. Job lose his servants. Job didn't lose his health. Why is that in there? So that you can understand the histories and the prophecy. So you might have read the story of back in Kings, which is a historical book. You may have read the story of how here was David, who the book says was like God in his own heart. A man after God's own heart. Yet he had to submit to a wicked king named Saul and could not even rebel against it. God was backing Saul to persecute David. Just reading that you couldn't understand it. Why in the world would God allow this to happen to David? But when you read the book of Job, it's all explained. Job is the righteous heir to the throne. The devil goes before God to claim that he ought to be the rightful heir. And God said, "What have you considered my servant Job?" He said, "Oh, Job ain't hitting on nothing. You turn Job over to me, I'll make that boy cry and cuss you to your face." God said, "Go ahead, go for what you know." Pardon me, this is a contemporary God, you understand. So he turned Job over to him. Why? To make Job, God knew he was worthy. But he was going to make the devil know, make Job prove to the devil that he was tougher than the devil. Now once you see that, then you can understand David's trial a little better. You say, "Oh, God wasn't mad at David. God let Saul shoot his best shot when he got through. David was on top. Now I understand why." That takes care of the history. What about the prophecy? You and I have caught more hell than any people in the history of civilization. Now, if we look at Job, we can understand it. Yet, when I talked about Timbuktu and Mali and Songhai and all those places, you know that at one time the black man was on the top of civilization. Yet it has all been taken away. Now today we're at the bottom of civilization. But when we read the book of Job, we can get some hope, because what happened to Job? Did he get restored to his former position? No. He got more. He was better. He had more peace of mind. He had more money, had a better family, and more servants, had better of everything after he underwent the trial. This is why we got to learn these letters, because they're not for then, they're for us now. These are qualities that God himself has put in this problem to say, hey, you better study this stuff so you can make it through, because this is your roadmap. This will tell you how to walk through this lake of fire that I'm kindling so that you can make it to the other side. In Proverbs, the book of Proverbs, central theme is, don't care how you study, don't care how much wisdom you think you've accumulated, you can't be wise and unrighteous at the same time. The only way God will bless you for your wisdom to bear fruit is that you have got to leave off the unrighteousness. Otherwise, you can have the heaviest head in the world. If your heart is dirty, you'll never be successful. That's what the whole book of Proverbs is telling you. Okay? So we need to study. I'm just sketching on. You got to study this for yourself. In fact, I'm not even going through all of them. I'm just touching on a few. You need to study all 26 of them beginning now. So these are the letters that the 13th problem is talking about that must be solved. In Lamentations is a book that points out that when you see yourself being chastised harshly by God because you're wrong, doesn't mean God doesn't love you. But just because God doesn't love you doesn't mean he's going to spare you. Because God loves you doesn't mean he's going to spare you. That whole book is a lesson on you don't correlate love with not punishing wrong. They don't fit. God loves you and will wipe you out if you keep on messing up. That's what that whole book of Lamentations is about. How God will destroy his people if they don't tighten up. He loves them, but he ain't going to love you and let you stay wrong. If he let you stay wrong, he wouldn't love you. Nobody going to love you and see you wrong and not going to try to correct you. Knowing that you will be rewarded for your righteousness and be punished for your wrong, that God would be out of his mind and say, oh, well, they pretty good boys, I ain't going to mess with them. No. That's what Lamentations is about. Study it very carefully. In Galatians, now study this. Don't just study the books themselves. Read up on the history of the books. Paul's epistle to the Galatians, he wrote after he came back from Arabia. You know, I know a lot of folks been in the church 100 years, don't even know Paul ever went to Arabia. They think he hung around Rome all his life. Paul went to Arabia. And when Paul went over into Arabia, and not the Arabia of today. Today when we think of Arabia, we're talking about Saudi Arabia. This was before white folks chopped it up. Arabia then consisted of what is now Saudi Arabia, East, North and South Yemen, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates. All of these Arab countries were just one country called Arabia. So Paul went over there. When Paul got back, Paul said he was very concerned by those people who were straying away from belief in Jesus. He's saying this because he had been over into the land that's supposed to be the Holy Land, and he said this, and you can read it in the Bible yourself. He comes back from Arabia saying, look, I heard that some of you all are trying to deny the man that was raised up in your midst to teach you. But I have been to Arabia, and I'm here to tell you, if an angel come from heaven, preach a gospel other than your leader preaches, he ought to be condemned forever. That's what the Bible says. And it wasn't talking about Jesus 2,000 years ago. It's talking about us today. Minister Farrakhan has been all over the whole Arabian Peninsula several times. And there and here, he bears witness. There's no teaching over there, I don't care how long they've had it, that will save us. We turn our back on the teaching of that one raised right in our midst, we'll be condemned. Don't care how heavy they were in Arabia, Paul knew that man raised up in Nazareth was the man. And no matter how heavy everybody gets in Mecca, we know that man raised up in Georgia is the man. Another thing Paul pointed out to the Galatians when he got back from Arabia. He said, you remember when I went out and started teaching the Gentiles? You see, nobody else had talked to the Gentiles. They wouldn't teach the Gentiles. Paul rose up and went out and taught the Gentiles. You know what Paul told the Galatians? He said, when I went out to teach the Gentiles, if you'll notice, I didn't consult with any other man, not even those who were apostles before me. Ones who sat at the table with Jesus, they couldn't tell me nothing. But I went out to the Gentiles. They may not like it, but that's what I did. And to prove God was backing me, I've been successful. That ain't a Paul back then. Listen to Minister Farrakhan today. When he went into the church, all them old jive niggas that used to sit around the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Well, Farrakhan going to the church. You damn right he going to the church. And he's successful in the church. And he ain't asking none of us nothing. And God is with him because you see how he is solidifying black people, don't care whether they're Baptist, Methodist, atheists, don't care what they are. Once they wake up and understand where we really are, we're all the same. Don't tell me about you in the luxury cabin and I'm in the scullery. If the ship sinks, we gonna drown together, so we better realize we're in the same boat. That's his gospel, and he ain't asking nobody permission to preach it. All praise to Allah. Then when he wrote his first epistle to the Corinthians, nobody talked about in there? The danger of division. He had detected that there were people dividing up the brotherhood. And he told them, hey, let's forget all the theory and all of this good teaching and all. Let's forget that. We better talk about one thing. We better stay together. We better not let nobody come in and divide us. Don't care if it's over politics, religion, economics, social status, or nothing, educational level, or none of that foolishness. We better learn that our destiny is linked with each other. And that's what he's writing in the Corinthians. You read the Corinthians, you see it. It's beautiful. One other thing he covered in Corinthians, in 1 Corinthians, is very interesting. In 1 Corinthians, the 9th chapter, beginning with the 7th verse, Paul teaches on the number 2 poor treasury. That's right. It's, as they used to say on that record, it's in the book. It's in the book. You want to understand what the number 2 poor treasury that the Muslims pay, you read the 9th chapter, beginning with the 7th verse of 1 Corinthians in the Holy Bible. And it will explain to you what our number 1 treasury is all about. And that's no accident. Then in the epistle to Timothy, he dealt with organization and chain of command. See, all these things that they're dealing with, look at it. Every one of them applies to us today. Every one of them is something we need to develop ourselves. That's why the Savior said we have to know these 26 letters of the language. We have to understand them and speak them well in order to be successful. Because every one of these qualities they're talking about is things that we as a group have got to develop. We've got to understand order, organization, chain of command, discipline, respect black leadership, follow black leadership. You haven't questioned white leadership, quit questioning black leadership. We got to learn that. Don't need to be a robot. Think. Think. If you think, you won't question. Because if you think, you'll understand that, hey, I'll question this afterwards. I'm too busy doing it now. In first epistle of John, he speaks on the love of brotherhood based on a common fatherhood. In fact, it's in that one. Some folks call it I John. But it's in that particular epistle that John asked the question, how can you say that you love God whom you have never seen and hate your brother whom you see every day? Tell you, don't call on God if you don't love your brother, because you're a hypocrite. Okay? Because if this is God's, if I'm God's child and you God's child, ain't nowhere in the world I love daddy and you love daddy, but I don't dig you and you don't dig me. Somebody's hypocriting. Okay? I won't say you're lying, you're hypocriting. Praise to Allah. And the last one, Jude. Read Jude. But it's good to read them in order. You can skip around. It doesn't make any difference, as I just did. But it's good to read them in order. Because after you have learned everything else, after you have mastered all the other 25 letters, and you get to Jude, then Jude deals with your responsibility to defend that truth against all the falsehood. Because at the time that Jude's epistle was written, from the way the scholars write it, they say that when Jude wrote his, what had happened was a lot of folks had seen the success of the apostles. So what they had done was they had come up with various other teachings that were so close that it could dream people off, but it had this big lie hid over in the middle. So it looked like the same thing. It looked like they were going the same direction, when in reality they were enemies of the truth. So Jude's whole epistle is talking about how you recognize the falsity and the responsibility and the method of defending the truth against the falsehood that's rising up. Okay? I hope I've given you something to keep you a little busy, brothers and sisters. So as we, wind up this 13 weeks, I hope that between now and then, what week are we on, incidentally? 8. All right. Got a good 5 to go. Got over a month to go. So that gives us a good time that when we finally meet together, and we're going to hold a special meeting to discuss it after the 13 weeks is up and we've had a chance, everybody to do their little homework, then we're going to have, it might be an all-day thing. We don't know. We're going to try to make it comfortable and everything. But we want to sit down and thrash through. What did we learn? What did we get out of it? If we didn't get nothing, we wasted 13 weeks. But between now and then, let's go into these 26 letters. And if we thoroughly understand, or even partially understand, all 26 of those letters, then when we start launching into the acceleration of our program based on our 13 weeks experience, we're going to look like that thing that they're shooting up down there at Cape Canaveral. That's right. And anything gets in the way, get burnt behind us. Okay? Anything left behind, you don't stand behind one of the missiles, do you? You get burned up. You can't stand. Either get on or get out of the way, right? All right. That's the way we're going to be. Either, like what they always say, either lead, follow, or get out of the way. That's the way we're going to be. So continue with your 13 weeks. You're doing good. You look at him, as a man say, marvelous. You're looking marvelous. Keep on with it. And tomorrow, I know that many of you, like us, will be in Washington, in the nation's capital, when Minister Farrakhan explodes phase 2 of his power bomb. You know, phase 1 is always the little one. Phase 2 is the one that does the damage. Phase 1 merely puts phase 2 in the right position to take care of business. So when he went to Kennedy Center, that was phase 1. He didn't really get it off then. No. That was sort of like the prologue. Now you get to the plot. The plot thickens. It's going to be beautiful. It's going to be historic, you know. So we know that a lot of you are going to be there, and we hope and pray a lot to see you there. If you got friends in the Washington area, if you got their phone numbers, call them, or when you get there, go see them. If you can't get there and you got friends down there, tell them to be sure and be at the convention center, because it's going to be something like they've never seen or heard before. Okay? So that's where we're headed after today. But we're very, very happy to see you, as we said, very happy to be back with you. Thankful to all of you for everything that you have done and are doing. We've got some brothers and sisters who worked around the clock to get the house in order that we're in, and we got everything stacked up in there. But, you know, it's a world of difference. It's still stacked up, but, hey, it was stacked up 930 miles away this time last week. It's stacked up here now. That's a whole lot of progress. So we're thankful to Allah. I thank Allah for all of you, and in thanking Allah for you, I am in truth thanking him first and foremost for Minister Farrakhan, because you and I wouldn't have even known each other. And all of the good that you, as my brothers and sisters, do for me is because of Minister Farrakhan getting us together. Without him, none of these blessings that my family and I are receiving at your hands would have been possible. Okay? Let's always keep that in mind. No matter how tight we get and how much we love each other, it is because of Minister Farrakhan, because I didn't know you and you didn't know me and you didn't know each other, most of you. Right? Now here we are coming together, a family. From one man, the spirit of one man that's transcending the whole globe, making one family, the Muhammad family. That's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, Abraham wasn't hitting on nothing compared to this man. Father of multitudes, he ain't seen no multitudes like Minister Farrakhan is creating. All right? So family, thank you, and I love you. Assalamu alaikum.